All right, another exciting Monday. It's the lead up to the real
Well,
fun. The real
it feels
fun.
like a bluesy Monday. It's kind of dreary here, and it should be exciting because week zero of college football is this Saturday. But for some reason, it feels like the weather has changed and the summer's over. I don't know why.
Yeah, and I just came back from vacation, so
It's hitting you. It's got to be hitting you.
oh yeah,
We'll get back in the groove of things, and there'll be another heat wave and all that stuff too. But for some reason, maybe it's just this weather. It's like, wow, this feels like a Monday. They haven't felt like a Monday for a very long time. So,
mm,
um, yeah, and high school
it's a
football started.
reality that the summer is ending. I do. Obviously, thank goodness. You know, I don't know how this was originally constructed, but thank goodness football
That's
is
it.
in the fall
Thank God.
because I would be depressed if we went
Well,
in and we had like nothing.
yeah, and people don't understand. Like you're in New Jersey, I'm in Connecticut. Once winter hits in December, it's dark at 4:30, and you feel that anticipation in September, October, November because you know it's coming. So you feel the fall is like, oh, it's a precursor to winter, and the world won't come alive again until April. And that's why college football and the NFL are so important because you have something to look forward to as summer winds down, as the days get shorter. So whoever did come up with fall football is a genius, but we're still in a country that hasn't figured out we don't need what's it called? The daylight savings time. We don't.
Yes, there's
I
no more.
mean, come on. What the hell? It was for farmers 100 years ago,
Correct,
you know?
correct.
But yet, look, we're going to do it again, and it's going to be dark at 4:30, and you and I are going to be looking at cocktails at 4, ready to drink our night away. Why? It makes no
It's
sense.
so there is nothing worse than it's the slow progression to lesser daylight. I just I mean I feel bad for Alaskans. Let's put it like that because they're dealing with it like 6 months out of the year. But there's no doubt there's a reason why Canadians drink more. There's no doubt, I mean that
Russians, I mean, it
Russians,
doesn't
Northern
Russia,
Europeans, right?
don't they
Y-
have like less daylight than us and stuff like, and in Florida, I mean, even when it's daylight savings time, 4:30 there is different than 4:30 up here. So, we got to like batten down the hatches. We got to focus on football. It's another winter. I mean, I've been around for a long time. I've been in the Northeast my entire life, so I'm ready for it. But man, yeah, you're right. I mean, I was just golfing the other day, and we were finishing our ninth hole at 7:57, and it was dark. And I'm like, wow, just like 2 weeks ago, it was 8:30. It was still light out. So we're heading towards that. But on a positive note, we've got college football, and we're going to talk about Scott Frost, the game against Northwestern. We're going to talk about the Big Ten TV deal and the preseason polls and all that stuff. And this time we are going to. Last time we were supposed to, and we just got off track about 3 stars and 2 stars, and people throwing DVDs at my head and stuff like that. But we'll start with the promo. myfootballcamps.com/D1. I've been telling a few people who have been on the verge of signing up for it that it's going to fill up because we don't have time. Like we're not going to have time, and they don't believe me, and then they're going to hit me up in late September and go, "I want to do the promo," and I'll be like, "It's full. I don't have time to do all of these kids." And right now is the time. The Corky Kell, the season's sort of kicking off. We got the ESPN weekend coming up in a couple of weeks. High school football is here. Now you're going and scrimmaging. Um, Carson Kruger just threw 4 touchdowns in the scrimmage. That's a tree falling in the woods if it weren't for the promo. Nobody would be around to hear it, and nobody would really care short of this small circle near him in Texas. Now everybody kind of knows it. Everybody saw it, and his improvement it's interesting to see because he's improved in 2 months. He started with us in June, and you could see the improvement in 2 months. But without that film going out there, no one would see it.
Let's ask this question too. if you know that every month you're going to have a promotion done off of you based off of what you're doing, there's an accountability to the player. That's what I think you see happening with Carson Kruger and the other players is that it's hey, I have to give content to these guys next month that they're going to talk about, and you know what? It's got to be a little bit better than it was before. Like if it's a slide backwards, that's not a good thing. So it kind of almost incents you to put in a little extra work. It's not just blasting out emails to college coaches. This is us putting the video out there. It goes out to the whole entire network, which includes all these coaches, but it's us talking about you. So you want us to be able to obviously have really great things to talk about. And look, Carson Kruger showed that, and he's going to continue to, I think. And I think we have Carson Ronner coming up because his new month thing just came up. So, as these guys get into their seasons, and I think Nebraska might have started their season, and Iowa should be starting pretty soon. So all these seasons should be going. The only one that is not yet started is your state.
Of course.
They just maybe Massachusetts has. They might be
New
scrimmaging this
York.
week.
So
New
like
York.
in the Northeast, for some strange reason, and this has always been an interesting thing with rankings that we've done over the years, is like it starts so early in some places, especially the South, and then the prep schools in New Jersey and the private schools in Massachusetts, they don't start till like mid-September sometimes. So it's like we used to do a rankings release in August, but sometimes there would be some film to evaluate of early season scrimmages and stuff for some states, and then other states you have to wait until September, in middle of September, and it's just like that was always a juggling point for us because people would say, well, why did this kid move up? He hasn't played a down of football. Well, yeah, he has. He played like 2 or 3 scrimmages already, or he's played in his first game, and people don't believe it up here. I don't know why they start so late up here. It makes no sense to me. There's more daylight. There's better weather. So why would you delay it until the middle of September in some cases? And then the season's so short. I mean, these private schools, they're 10-game seasons. Some of them. I'm not talking like Bergen or Bosco, but I'm talking like some of these private schools in New England, 10-game seasons. So I mean, they start in mid-September, and it's 10 weeks. They're done by November. Just seems like a lot of nothing to prepare for all year round. So I don't know why it starts so late up here, but it is starting. You know, and yeah, to your point, Nebraska and Rauner, they'll get an earlier start than some of the other kids, but there is an accountability. There absolutely is, because you know what? I'm going to say what I see. I'm not going to say anything about a regression for a kid. I mean, that's just not what we do. But I'm also going to be able to really tell for myself. When coaches hit me up and say, "Is this kid really improving?" I got my reputation to stick with. I'm not going to lie, and I'm certainly not going to go out there and say this kid's made so many improvements if he hasn't. So it becomes evident, honestly.
Makes
You'd
sense.
have to read between the lines and see it, but it becomes evident to me if I'm promoting somebody who hasn't taken that next step. And I don't say that about Kruger because he hasn't. The whip is just better. His release is tighter and quicker. And I don't know if that's something he's worked on, but the ball comes out quicker than it did 2 months ago. And these kids are all working with quarterback coaches. They're all working with their high school coaches, and they're all looking to develop that. And it's a shame because some of them will develop that late. He's in his senior year. I mean, I'm putting out today my top 25 quarterback rankings for 2023, and it's fun. And I'm not doing what the websites do is they do 7 or 8 different rankings releases, and I may do that someday, but right now I'm not looking to, use that as a subscription seller. My site's free. So I waited and I went through the film over and over and over again. And I'm just coming out. Every top 25 quarterback is committed, everyone, in the country. And they've been committed for a while. There were 2 guys that flipped. Uh, Collins flipped from Purdue to LSU. And then FSU had a flip to Mississippi State. Everybody else has been committed for months and months and months. So for a kid like that who's a 2023 who may just start to get better, it's really late. So now he needs the promotion even more.
That's a great point. Really great point. Check it out at myfootballcamps.com/D1. All the information's on there. We have videos explaining it. You can probably listen. You go to my Twitter or TikTok or Mike's Twitter, TikTok. You'll see the video. You'll see the quality of what's being done, and you'll see what's getting out there, and it's so cool because you get that double hit, me and so you did like the Kruger video, and then like a couple days later I did it, and so it's like boom boom, you get two quick hits in a month, and we're retweeting each other, so we're like hitting
Mm-hmm.
we're hitting that group over and over again. So it's really, really a great opportunity. Check out myfootballcamps.com/D1 or nucsports.com/D1. Your choice. It's on there. And there's plenty of information. And, obviously you could always DM me and Mike if you have a question about it. Listen, I think the 6-month thing is the way to go. But, I highly recommend, look, do the first one if you're new to it. Try see the quality of it, and then you're going to go from there and see really what you can get from it. So
Yeah.
um
And if you tag me, I mean, if you tag me in your highlights, or if you're a parent or a coach that tags me in your highlights, or you DM me, you're going to get a response that says, "Here's the promotion. You can sign up for it." Okay, I'm not going to just. I get tagged in so much film over the last 25 years, and so many DMs. Keep an eye on this kid. Get this kid on your radar, and all this other stuff. And glad to do it, but now it's a business, and it never was before. Before I would ignore them. Now I'll mention, to you that we have this promotion available. And the funny part about it is, if somebody does sign up for the promotion, we had one particular player in California who signed up for the one-time promotion, and he tagged me in his first highlight, scrimmage highlight of the year. I retweeted it because he's a client, but I also DM'd him. I said, "Do you want to do the 6 month? Because I think it can really help you based on what I just saw on your phone." But I love the people that just sort of DM or tag, or like, "Hey, watch this." That's not what we do. I've never done that. I've never ever been
mhm.
in the 0-star, 2-star needing attention business ever. And now I'm not in it either. It's just it's a great promotion. It's a great opportunity. But you can tag me till you're blue in the face. You're gonna have to sign up to get the
You're right.
retweets.
Exactly. It's a great point. Transitioning. So let's talk about, we got games coming up this week.
Hmm.
And you had mentioned the pre-show. Nebraska obviously has a game in Ireland, right? This week.
Yeah, Dublin against Northwestern, and the big TV deal was signed. There are fans of Nebraska that wish they had stayed in the Big 12, and I think they would probably be a better fit there, more competitive there had they stayed. But the TV money is just astronomical, and it's what moves the needle, and it's the reason why USC and UCLA are leaving the Pac-12. It's for the TV money. Um, you know, they're going to get paid no matter what as a university, but this is a really important game for Scott Frost. He can't lose to Northwestern. He can't lose his opener to Northwestern. Northwestern is predicted to be the last team in the West. Nebraska is predicted to be the second to last team in the West. The West is actually sneaky okay, because I do like, Wisconsin. I like Iowa. Minnesota's always in there. Purdue's going to be interesting because they lost a lot on offense. But there are teams in the West that are quality football programs, and Nebraska could easily finish second to last or last, and he's gone. But if he loses that game in Dublin, it's the only game of any significance this weekend when it comes to FBS Power Five schools. He might as well just pack up. That's it. I mean, this is kind of a must-win game for him.
Yeah, it's interesting because he played there and he was like going to be the savior of Nebraska football, coming from Oregon and Central Florida, where he had tremendous success. Oregon as the offensive coordinator, Central Florida as the head coach. Right, a tremendous success. He ran a little bit. It's obviously the updated option because it's from the spread, but he has an option element to what everything he does. And Nebraska, I don't know. You could correct me if I'm wrong. Has Nebraska had a Martinez at quarterback for since the beginning of time?
Mm-hmm.
Is it two different Martinezes? Is that what it has been back to back?
Not back to back, like per se, but yeah. I mean, Adrian Martinez was their quarterback as a true freshman, when Scott Frost arrived, and he was committed to Tennessee, and Frost flipped him to Nebraska, and he started off very well, and has regressed since. And, you know, it's as your quarterback goes, you go. He's transferred to Kansas State now, and we'll see how he does there. I think he's got more talent there to work with. And now it's Casey Thompson, who transferred in from Texas. Who had a good season last year but was injured, has a lot of ability. They have question marks at running back. They have question marks at wide receiver. The offensive line is solid. But I was watching Scott Frost in a podcast. There was a podcast where he said his offensive line was throwing up 15 to 20 times per practice, or 15 to 20 vomits per practice, because the new O-line coach is working him so hard. And previously he had sort of joked about the Junction Boys and stuff like that. And he's not a funny human being at all. And I don't know if he's overly smart either. I'm sure he is, but he's also a football coach. He's a jock. He's a dude, right? So him saying that went over like a lead balloon. All the people saying, hey, heat stroke's no joke and all this. What he was kidding. But I was watching his body language and the way he presents himself, and I thought this thought. It has to suck on a daily basis to be Scott Frost. And I'm telling you this for this particular reason. He's making millions of dollars, right? They signed him to a very, very lucrative deal. He's never going to have to work for the rest of his life. But to be a Nebraska guy, to be a former player, to be a legend at Nebraska, to go back to the school you're proud of and suck like 3-9 last year, that's got to carry a really heavy weight. And I think we saw that a little bit at the Big Ten Media Day, where he's kind of deadpan and quiet. He has to be carrying this burden of awfulness with him everywhere he goes, because he's been a failure in Nebraska. And hopefully it turns around for them. But I can't even imagine, going back to your alma mater. Let's say UConn was a real football program, and they're not. They used to be, but they're not. And you were the head coach.
That's
right?
awful.
And all your UConn buddies are rooting you on. And let's say
Yep.
Schuman was a UConn legend, and he led them to the Fiesta Bowl. Let's just make stuff up, right? And you suck. You suck. That's got to feel horrible. So I think he's under a lot of pressure. But I also think, when I watched him on that podcast and I watched him at Big Ten Media Days, I think he's really, really in a bad place. And that's just my guess. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but he better win.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's hard sometimes it works out great when you go back to your alumni and, it's a home run. They've talked about this with Dabo Sweeney, right? Like going to Alabama if Nick Saban ever stepped down or something like that. Like I think he's pretty smartly said that, whether he actually is interested in it or not, but he's pretty smartly said he's not doing that,
Dumb.
And I actually,
that would be dumb.
I think it would be dumb too, because look, now Bear Bryant played at Alabama, right? Am I correct? I'm pretty sure. Did he play at Alabama?
I thought he was Texas A&M.
Or was he Kentucky?
I don't know. This is what's funny about us. We're the oldest people on earth. We know more about college football than anybody. And Bear Bryant is still too old for us to know and remember.
That is funny, because I really feel like
I know he started as a coach at Texas A&M, and then he went to Alabama,
right,
but I don't think he was an Alabama guy. I don't think he was.
He played at Alabama. He played at Alabama.
Okay. Well,
so I am right. I know something.
I don't know anything. I know nothing. So
he did play at Alabama.
But some examples of coaches, Mario Cristobal's going to Miami now. That's his life. He loves it. He shoots up the U every morning when he wakes up, even when he was at Alabama and Oregon. He's just a Miami guy. If he's not successful there, it's going to really damage him as a human being. And people don't think about this stuff. They don't think about, and I'm not saying James Franklin went to Penn State, but they don't think about how people are just constantly saying, oh, James Franklin sucks. We can't do anything, blah, 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 or Jim Harbaugh sucks, or whatever the toll it can take on these human beings. And I have to write that they suck or don't suck. And I don't say suck. But I mean, Jimbo Fisher, I wrote an article today that's going up on the site. He said it's time to play football. No, enough of the talk. And I'm not a big fan of Jimbo Fisher. And I know a lot of people who know him, and I don't know him. But I know there's definitely that narcissistic, egotistical sort of coach that you would expect, like he won a national championship and now he's at Texas A&M and he's making $10 million a year. And he comes off as a narcissistic guy, and I believe he is. And I think they're going to go 8-4 again. And everybody's going to say he's overpaid and he sucks. Now, even if you're a narcissist or whatever, it still affects you on a daily basis. You kind of have to stay off social media. So for Scott Frost to continually hear over and over again how horrible he's been, and 3-9 is a regression from when he started at the place he loves, it's got to hurt him as a human being. And we don't even think about that stuff. Like, we don't think about, I woke up today and it was Monday and it was kind of dreary out, and I started thinking about winter because it was kind of hazy and gray and it's not 90 degrees, and that affected my mood. But these guys, they're not robots. So Scott Frost needs to win that football game, but the Scott Frost that I see at Big Ten Media Day and in that podcast is a Scott Frost that's carrying a huge burden of failure.
I think that comment
needs to be shook.
Yeah, I think that comment that you talked about with where the linemen, he's joking about it, but like the linemen are puke 15 to 20 linemen are puking every practice. It makes me think that he is going to push as hard as he can this year to try to get over the hump, and whatever he has to do it. And if he can't do it and he gets fired, it is. But he's not going to leave a stone unturned, because he probably is wearing that huge burden that if he for some reason didn't do everything he could and they ran him out of town, he will regret it at another. But if he did everything he could, he's probably going to wear that burden of not being successful in Nebraska. But at least he'll walk away like, hey, like, I just pushed him as hard as I could. I wasn't able to recruit the way I needed to. I didn't maybe get the support I needed, whatever it is, whatever the excuses are. But if he didn't, I think if he didn't push the way that he probably, and that's what I think he's communicating when he's saying that. He's saying, I'm pushing and we're doing everything we can. That's kind of his way of, how coaches are, right? Like, coaches will try to use psychology to drive signals to their fan base and to their players. And basically that's like that's a quick way of saying, yeah, you guys may not agree with it, but I'm doing everything I can to try and make it happen.
And I think if he does fail, it's going to affect the rest of his life. And people are going to say, well, he's probably got $50 million in the bank. And listen, I would love to have $50 million in the bank. I don't. That would soften the blow of failure. But that's still, there's still guys out there that regret fumbling in their high school football championship game and will never live it down. So imagine going back to your alma mater and being wooed. Florida wanted him. A bunch of other programs wanted him when he was coming out of UCF. Going back there and just being honestly, if he has a horrible year, he's going to go down as one of the worst coaches in Nebraska history. And that's going to really affect everything that is thought about him, as a Nebraska alum. It's not as a player, you can't take that away from him. But I don't know. I just saw that and I was like, and he's always this way. He's always deadpan and he's always quiet. But this is a dude who has a 100-pound weight on his shoulders. So if that reflects to your team and they come out in Dublin against Northwestern flat and they don't win this football game, you might as well get rid of him right after that. You might as well fire him on the flight back because he's
Ooh.
not going to recover from that. They're not going to recover from that. They're just not. I'm sorry. That is one of the games on this schedule. If you look at, let's say there's 6 games that they could win, that's one of them. So if they lose that, then you're talking 5-7. You're talking 5-7. You're talking fired anyways. So this is a must win. This isn't like Ohio State in Dublin where you know you're going to get thrashed by 40. This is Northwestern. And Pat Fitzgerald's pretty ticked off. He was upset that he was picked last in the West. He's got a lot to
They always
prove.
pick him last, right?
But every other year, his team sort of comes
Is
up,
good. He does a
and
good
they've
job.
won the
He's a
West.
great
They've
coach.
won, yeah, they've won the West twice. I just put out my Big Ten coaching rankings, and I had him number 2. And people were like, "You're an idiot. You're a moron. You're so stupid." I'm like, that is a hard job. I could have made him number 1.
That
That
is a
is
very hard job.
really with academics and the recruiting territory and not having a lot of tradition there. It's a really, really hard job, and he does a great job. And I wouldn't sleep on Northwestern. I mean, I know a lot of people that are putting their mortgage on the under for wins Nebraska. I think it's 6. And putting a lot of money on Northwestern to win that football game in Dublin. So that's, the rest of the slate I looked at, I couldn't find anything to be really interested about. But
Pat,
I'm going to be
Pat
watching that.
Fitzgerald is the polar opposite of
Yes.
Scott Frost. He went back to his
Yep.
alumni. I mean, he's not winning a national championship at Northwestern, but wildly successful relative to the history of Northwestern. He did coach under. He passed away. The guy actually did a great job before him. He was an excellent coach. I can't think of his name now. He passed away. That's who he was underneath, and then
Yeah.
that's when he got the job.
Well, that's who we played. That's who we played for. Yeah, they haven't
Right.
had a lot of coaches. I mean, they've had like 3 successful coaches over the last 25 years or whatever. Um, and it's a very difficult job, and they know the expectations there are different. I mean, they're not Nebraska expectations. Nebraska expectations should honestly be Northwestern expectations. You win 8 games, 9 games, or you win the West every couple of years. Great. But Nebraska fans not only want the West, they want the Big Ten and they want the national championship. They want all that stuff they used to have, which they're not going to get. Uh, they're never going to win it. They're never going to win a national championship again. And it's really hard for people to get their arms around that.
What do you think? It was Randy Walker, by the way, who was the coach.
And before him, man,
Gary Barnett did a good job.
That's who I was thinking of because remember, they came out of nowhere.
That's who I think he played for, Gary Barnett. I want to
Yes,
say.
so that was the team. The running back, his name began with an A, Autry, I think. They had a really, really good football team, and it was so long ago that a lot of people don't remember that. But I remember how dangerous they were, and they sucked before that. They sucked really. And this is the other thing about coaches nowadays. You're never going to see a building job like Bobby Bowden or Frank Beamer, or even Gary Barnett. You're never going to see somebody allowed to grow a program like that because every 3 years someone's fired. You can't have bad years.
Right.
So, Scott Frost could be, I don't know, he could be Frank Beamer. It could take him 6 years. He's not going to get that. I mean, who knows if Scott Frost stays after this season and the continuity is there, they could do great things, but he's not going to. They won't let him. It's too much of a win now, immediate gratification world we live in. And his time's kind of up. I mean, I get 3-9 last year, a lot of close games, but nobody cares about close games. They care about wins. They hung with Ohio State. They hung with Oklahoma. Who cares? You didn't
What
win.
do you think
That's
Tom
what people care
Osborne was
about.
able to? What do you think Tom Osborne was able to do that? Obviously they fired Gary Gibbs after him, who actually did a pretty good job. It's just that he wasn't Tom Osborne. But what was Tom Osborne able to do? Was it the fact that he had the time to build it? Because he was like the first to have a strength and conditioning program in the
Well,
old
and
days. So
Solich was very good after that as
Coach was good,
well.
yeah.
I mean, really good. The change that's occurred that has hurt Nebraska is national recruiting. It's just national recruiting. If you think about Nebraska in the late 1990s and the early 2000s when they were, last a power team and playing for national championships, that was the cusp. We moved from Blue Chip Magazine to 900 numbers for our recruiting information. And then in the late 90s, you know, online started to become a deal. Super Prep, I remember, had a website. Rivals came around, Scout came around. Recruiting started to become more with the internet and more with online access to huddle film and things like that. It became a much easier job to identify and locate. Now it's still difficult to recruit, but to identify and locate kids out of your region was very, very difficult to do. And then it became much, much easier. And that kind of cut into not players in Nebraska or the Midwest so much, but Nebraska used to get really great players from states that became overcrowded in recruiting. And more schools were starting to go in there and competing for those players. And Nebraska, couldn't compete with that because, yeah, to get to Nebraska, it's a haul when it comes to like an official visit. And that was the norm. And then it all of a sudden became, kids in California looking at Nebraska are suddenly zipping across country to Miami on direct flights. And now they've got a whole new opportunity to see a different school that didn't recruit their area at all. So that's what kind of killed them is the national recruiting. And I don't think they can get back to it because they get too many recruiting disadvantages. Now, Notre Dame does, but they got a bigger brand and they're more centrally located. And there's other programs that have been successful without a great recruiting foundation. But Nebraska's Nebraska. I mean, that's just there's no talent there. So every win has to be on the road in recruiting. And back then it was easier because it was less populated.
And any player that they do have in their state is looking to go elsewhere, like this Malachi Coleman, who's like a star in Nebraska, right?
Yeah. Well, I think he's gonna stay. I
You
think
think
he's gonna. He's so good.
he
So
is?
good.
He's so good,
Freak. 6'5",
so big.
210.
Yeah,
Oh, it's so freaky. And but you're right. I mean, so let's just say,
at least he's
25 years
peaking. He's
ago,
peaking, right? He's peaking outside.
would he have
Peak, no
had
way,
offers from every program in the Southeast Conference and the ACC 25 years ago? No,
no way.
but there's also some guys that they used to recruit, from California and from Texas and from some other areas that didn't have big offers. And
Lawrence
now they've
Phillips
all
and
got
Tommy
them.
Frazier. Lawrence Phillips and Tommy Frazier, would they be going to Nebraska today? With Tommy
No,
Frazier, I can't remember where in
no,
Florida, Miami maybe, I don't know, but
they wouldn't.
someone there's no way someone would have grabbed him for their system. There's no like I feel like Tommy Frazier's a guy that probably had a handful of offers just because it was regionalized. They probably were within his region, and he probably thought, I wouldn't mind going away from my region. And probably one of the only schools that offered him that were outside of his region was probably Nebraska. And then obviously you have a big time coach like Tom Osborne and perfect storm. You wouldn't get him. Now he would have an offer from everywhere, right? So, I mean,
Now,
theoretically,
if you're going to go to the Midwest, you're going to if you're a big time player, you're going to go to the Midwest. You're going to Ohio State. If you're a middle of the road player, and a middle of the road to me, again, we talk about 3 stars. They're essentially disparaged because there's more 3 stars in the country than there are fours and fives. There's more 3 stars in the NFL than there are fours and fives. But people consider those middle of the road players. Now you have the option to go to Iowa, to Indiana, to Wisconsin, to all these schools that now sort of spot recruit these areas that are heavily populated with great football players. And before, yeah, they would try to keep up. But now, if I'm a coach anywhere in Power Five, I could just do a search, best players in the state of California. And I could reach those players within a second. I could send them a DM. In 1995, 1997, 1999, you couldn't reach them. I remember, calling them on the phone. You know, text messaging wasn't even a thing back then. It was AOL Instant Messenger. You know, and that's the world we've lived in and changed so much that takes these programs that are in remoter areas and really evens the recruiting playing ground. Now, Tom Osborne wouldn't have been given as much of an opportunity to build, just like everybody else. I think there are some coaches. I'll say this out loud. Tom Herman probably shouldn't have been fired. I mean, he's the only coach, not named Mac Brown, in the last like 20 years who won 10 games. He went to the Sugar Bowl. He beat Georgia. Okay, but he had a disappointing year after that, got canned. Now he has off-field issues. Okay, just like every coach seems to, whether they're apparent or not. They all have off-field issues. You know, but then they move into Sark. Sark's 5-7. You know, and there was the talk this week. Sark just named Quinn Ewers as his starter. The
Saw that.
boosters made him do it. The booster didn't make him do it, but he's under extreme pressure to tie his success to that guy because if he starts Hudson Card and they lose to Alabama by 30, which they're going to do, then everybody questions him when he starts Ewers the next day. All of these decisions need to be made, but Tom Herman is a guy that probably should have been given longer to be successful at Texas, and now they've rebooted, and now Steve Sarkisian should probably be given 5-6 years to put the continuity together. But if he has another 5-7 season this year, he's gone, and that's
Is
the
that
world we
why
live in.
Arch is visiting other places? So I saw that Arch is visiting other places, right? I can't remember. You would know, but
I don't know.
a couple other
I don't know
schools.
why. I don't know why he would. I mean, no, it has nothing to do with yours. Nothing.
Okay.
Um,
Does it have
I
anything to do with
think,
Sark? If he loses,
yeah. Well, here's the thing.
hedge
Okay,
your bet,
and
type of thing.
absolutely, and that's what you have to do. I mean, if you committed to Alabama, you don't have to hedge your bets. And Nick Saban's going to be there for as long as he wants to be there. Kirby Smart at Georgia, same thing. You know, and it came down to these schools, but he chose Texas, and guess who might not be there? You just don't know. Now, I think Sark is a good coach. Is this too big a stage for him? Probably. Did he get this job because of the rehab job he did at Alabama? Yeah. Um, we'll see how successful he can be, but you have to hedge your bets. You have to have a backup option. If they lose to Alabama by 40, and then they lose to Oklahoma by 40, and I'm not saying either of those things are going to happen because they shouldn't lose by that much. And then they stubbed their toe against an also ran, and they got 3 losses mid-season. The talk's going to start, and it's going to hurt recruiting, and it's going to hurt everything. So, yeah, I get why. This is what's funny because I said it out loud. I said when Arch Manning committed to Texas, I said that the winners here were honestly Georgia and Alabama and Texas. Texas needed this commitment. Georgia doesn't need this headache. Alabama doesn't need this headache of the Manning name and all this other stuff. But I also said, when I said he wasn't a 5-star, Texas fans wouldn't care if he decommitted. They would agree with me that he's not a 5-star. They would agree with me that he's overrated. Um, it's just it's a fickleness that occurs in college football more so than I think any other sport, and I love it. But Arch Manning visiting, the reason I shrug my shoulders is because it doesn't really matter. He's the 8th best quarterback in this class. It's important to Texas, but these other schools don't need him. Alabama's
Right.
got 2 quarterbacks in their class. Okay, Georgia's going to be fine. They're going to get a 5-star in 2024. They don't need him. It's not necessary. So I don't know what's going on. I honestly feel the fallback here would be Ole Miss.
I agree.
Even though the family doesn't trust Lane Kiffin because of what he did at Tennessee, and they think he's going to bolt for another job soon because that's what he does. But the family is so invested in Ole Miss. I mean, it's unbelievable. There was a consideration based on my sources of not going to Alabama simply because they play Ole Miss every year, and not going to Georgia simply because there was a chance that with restructuring of the divisions with Texas and Oklahoma moving in there, that they might play Ole Miss more often. That came into play. So I think Ole Miss is the fallback for him. I think he sticks. I don't think it has anything to do with Quinn Ewers. He knew Quinn Ewers was going to be the starter. And I do believe that the Mannings still want him to redshirt, but Sark's under pressure too. And I mean, I'm big into psychology. Sark has had issues off the field before. The amount of pressure that this individual is facing, and it comes from me too. I mean, I think I was just blocked. I don't know. I think my phone number was just blocked by an assistant coach at Texas. I think. I used to text him all the time, and it was a little iMessage, right? Now I text twice, nothing. Doesn't even say it's delivered. And I call, and it says this isn't in service anymore. And I think that means you've been blocked because I don't think his phone number's changed. The sensitivity level there is super high because of the pressure that they're all under. It's insane pressure for these guys.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they're paid obviously tremendously well, but in the time that they're in there, I mean, it is. Just haven't talked to Rutgers staff guys here and there, and they just tell me it is 24/7 now. There used to be the kind of the schedule was here's when recruiting was going on. Here's it's recruiting 24/7. It's obviously football 24/7. But it is
Portal,
also it's portal, it's NIL
NIL,
and player management, right? Because you got to make sure they're
nightmare.
still going to class, like not. I mean, not failing out, right? A lot of these guys believe they're going to the NFL, but really the 90% majority of them are not. So you're still trying to make sure those guys are doing all the things they still have to be eligible, right? I mean, you have overachievers, but you still need them to be able to. So there's so many elements to it. It's just like, and then that's not even counting. Obviously the head coach is the one who deals with the alumni mostly, but that part of it, like I don't even
That's an
know how.
underrated responsibility. It really is
Yeah,
because Tom. I knew Tom O'Brien forever at Boston College, right? He went off to NC State and he cashed in. Back then cashing in was like a $3 million a year deal or whatever. And you didn't go in conference, but the off field responsibilities he couldn't stand. He hated every one of them. He had to sit up in front of booster clubs. He had to sit up in front of donors. He had to be put out there as the what do you call it, trophy wife, so to speak, and be that guy who sells the program. And that's a very underrated part that you mentioned. Recruiting, NIL, portal, all that stuff. Sark has to sell this program. He has to have the boosters happy. He has to talk to the Rotary Club and all this other stuff that's just never ending. And the juggling is unbelievable. And I guess it's why guys change. Like a lot of guys I know who were assistant coaches or GAs moved to assistants, moved to coordinators, then became head coaches, and all of a sudden they disappear. And they're like, we used to have, beers and lunch, and now I can't even get you to respond to a text message. Well, it's because they're so freaking busy. They're just unbelievably busy.
people don't realize how busy they are, and when they actually get on the field to coach, the little bit of coaching they actually get to do as head coaches, that has to almost be like kind of like an oasis. Oh, I get to do what I actually really want to do. Right, I actually get to do for a couple of hours. It's very interesting that whole dynamic. I think the alumni thing, you're 100% right. Is like I just saw with like because I'm a UConn alum, played there, and what Jim Mora he's trying to do, like I commend him because really nobody's done this in the longest time. But like he had a barbecue for all the alumni. He had this thing for all the alumni to go to. Like, and he has to come, even if he's there for 20 minutes. He still has to physically go there, go to that
Mm-hmm.
thing, get shuttled to the next thing, and that that whole part of it is so. My question is this: how does a program like Nebraska and like Iowa, obviously they've had a head coach for Ferenc for a long time. He's done a great job. They're always on the cusp. They close. They just never quite have gotten to the championship, but they're always on the border. He does a great job in a place that I guess it has a ton of tradition, but could be hard. I think it could be hard on Iowa. So, but how does Nebraska get back, or how does a place like that? I'm trying to think of another place. Like I'll use Minnesota as a great example. That guy's a fantastic coach. Okay. I mean, what he did at Western Michigan, like to me, is even way more. Central Florida, you have players, right? So you're in a lesser conference. If you can get the second guys to stay with you, you're gonna win. Western Michigan is, I mean, I've been there. I've been there. Like, I don't know how you recruit there. Now they've built facilities now, okay, because of what they've done. But when he was there, he didn't have anything,
Right.
and it's incredible. So now Minnesota goes there. People
Hmm.
assume he's going to become like Iowa, right, or Wisconsin, and he's done really well. He's done really. We know
Yes.
he's a fantastic coach. We know he's a fantastic recruiter. They have unbelievable facilities. I've seen their facilities, and he's on the borderline. But the question is, can he get there? Like he may not get there. As great as he is, he may not get there. How do those places get there?
I mean, it's hard. So Iowa has been very smart in keeping their consistency. You know, the fans get a little bit antsy and they don't like that, you know, Ferentz has his son as the offensive coordinator and the offense sucks and all. They get upset about that. But they've many of them have accepted that this is a, you know, Saturday religion during the fall and we're going to win 9 or 10 games every year. And every other year we might have a push towards winning the division. You know, and it's not an exception. They haven't accepted that, but they're still not Nebraska fans because Nebraska, once you've tasted the champagne, that's all you want. You know, it's they're looking for that high again. You know, so that's the trouble here is that Iowa fans can complain about Ferentz all they want, but he's been there forever, and they know what they're getting and they know what they're going to be. Nebraska fans want what they used to be. So they get very impatient. So a Frank Solich should have never been fired, but he wasn't Tom Osborne. You know, then Callahan was a bad hire. You get rid of him. Then you got Bo Pelini, and he's an ass, sure, you know, a real jerk. But he was winning. But
He
that's
was winning, yeah.
but he's embarrassing the program. He's too,
Right.
you know, what this, that, and the other. Get rid of him, and then you bring in Riley, you know, and Riley is awful. Good guy, awful. And now Frost, awful. And they just want to keep. So let's say they get a coach. Let's say for some reason Bill O'Brien takes the Nebraska job, or let's say that Lane Kiffin takes the Nebraska job or something, and they win 10 games. It's not good enough. At Iowa, it is. At Nebraska, no. We want 11. We want 12. We want national championships. So it's just different. I think honestly, those expectations get in the way of success sometimes because they are so high and the bar is set so high that you can't lower it ever. And so I think it's an easier job at Wisconsin. You know, Barry Alvarez was great. You know, and they've had a transition from Bielema to Kristen. They've been good, and fans are okay with that. But Nebraska, they're not okay with anything.
100%. That's it. I almost feel like, and you correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the Texas schools, not just Texas, obviously Texas has an expectation, right? But the other Texas schools seem to have some level of that expectation too, like A&M, even Baylor, even though they've been really good and they've been, but they have this level of like expectation. The TCU, right? They and Gary Patterson didn't they end up running kind of Gary Patterson out at the end, even though he
Eventually.
he built it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But
He's
none of those schools have ever tasted the champagne. And
That's
Texas
true.
has.
That's a
So
good
the
point.
expectations at Texas are like, we want Vince Young and we want national championship. It's almost like a drug. You know, it's almost like, you know, some of these programs are like, yeah, we smoke weed every once in a while, you know, but we're not hooked on it. It's good. It relaxes us. We dig it. And then there's those teams that have been to the top and have been, you know, snorting lines of cocaine at strip clubs. And they're just like, I got to get that feeling back. I got to get that adrenaline back. And you know what? That's destructive. You know, it may be the highest high you've ever gotten, but it's destructive, you know? So tasting that champagne really can be a difficult thing. And Alabama fans are lucky. Nick Saban's such a great coach, and he's won it 6 times. Because imagine if he won it once, and then they ran him out. They would be Nebraska right now, maybe. Because they want that taste. It's my
Well, LSU
analogies
will
are
run you out.
always,
LSU's going to run you out, right? If you
yeah,
they've
yeah,
had three different guys that have won championships in the last
right.
20 years.
And
All have been
Saban left,
right.
but
Saban left.
Les Miles was booted, and Ed Orgeron off-field issues. But within a year of winning 2019 and having arguably the best team in college football history, he was like on the hot seat in 2020 and COVID year, which shouldn't count towards anything. And they weren't a good football team, and he lost everything. Jamar Chase sat out. They lost Joe Burrow. They lost everything, and he was on the hot seat. It's crazy. But that's life when you're making the big bucks, But I think these fan bases that have, Miami's another example. Once you get that taste, you want it back. And is that your kid? Because I'm making my comparisons to snorting coke at strip clubs is probably not appropriate.
He just came to give me a kiss before he goes to. He goes. And this will make you laugh. He's going to. What is it called? It's some sort of like young physicians class. So it's like teaching them the basics of medicine and stuff like that for kids.
That's
He's only
awesome.
7.
How old is he?
He's 7.
He's 7. He's
Yeah.
like, Dad, what is bumps of cocaine at a strip club mean? 7-year-old. My analogies have long been known to be inappropriate. I've just kept them off the air while I was gainfully employed at a company that wouldn't like them. Now I'm off the rails. I mean,
that's funny.
So I could use the champagne. Let's go
Yeah,
back to that. Taste it, and then you want it again, and that changes the entire trajectory of wants and needs of a new coach. Whereas those that accept, hey, this is kind of cool. We're always in it. The Kirk Ferentz is cool. That's just a different. And I think it's easier to maintain and be successful if you have that sort of continuity.
Yeah, I think there's only a few coaches who I believe can come into one of these places and have a chance. So I actually think like Minnesota hired the right guy to get that chance. But like if you hired Lane Kiffin, the good and the bad of it, he would give you that chance. I mean, you would have to, if you were in Nebraska, you'd literally have to empty. You'd have to empty the coffers, like in order to even attract him. Because he definitely doesn't want to live in the Nebraska. Especially since he's in the 4A now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, if he's going anywhere, it's going to be there's going to be some sort of ocean, some sort of shore. He's not going to landlock himself anywhere, and it's going to be an exciting place for him because now he can sort of pick and choose. Bill O'Brien's the more likely candidate, but I don't think Nebraska fans would be happy with that hire, first of all.
Right.
And I don't think they would give him a chance. I don't think he would be given the time to build the program. Penn State did because they were in such disarray, and he sort of saved that program. But then he bolted on them and went to the Texans, and they were very distraught about that. James Franklin comes in. Oh my God, we love him better than Bill O'Brien. He can recruit at least. 2016, great year. They should have gone to the playoff. They got screwed. Now, James Franklin sucks. I don't know how he keeps getting contract extensions. We can't win anything. We suck. It's just that's how fans are. They're just never going to be appeased in that way. And it's just the way it is. Alabama fans complain to me all the time about not having kids ranked high enough. I mean, come on, you're Alabama. He's a 5-star, but I know he's like 13th in the country. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And that's just the I guess, what do you call those? I call them pretty people problems, but they're first world problems.
Right.
You try to be a Rutgers fan and look at recruiting, and then tell me you go back to being an Alabama fan and you bitch about anything. You will never bitch again, ever, if you spend 1 year following Kansas recruiting or Rutgers recruiting.
Well, I always thought like on both those things. Kansas, the biggest mistake Kansas ever made was they got rid of. Oh, he was the greatest, and
Mangino, the
and
big
that
fat
was
man.
that was because I to this day I believe that was because of what he looked like. Like I'm
Mm,
not quick to throw things around, but like as soon as he had an average year,
yeah.
being a heavier
Well,
man,
he
you
dis
know.
he disputed too with
Okay,
with he wasn't like Pelini. He was a hard headed guy for sure. But I remember right around that time, it was like the two fat guys were both, they weren't dismissed at the same time. But what he did in bringing Kansas to the Orange Bowl, and what Ralph Friedgen did in bringing Maryland, I believe it was the Orange Bowl as well. Amazing jobs. And fat guys, I
amazing.
love fat guys, right? Both gone. I mean, Ralph Friedgen was the ACC Coach of the Year
He was
and got fired.
amazing.
He got
I have
fired.
a funny
Mark
Ralph
Mangino
Friedgen
brought
story.
Kansas to the Orange Bowl, and he was fired. So, what's your Friedgen story?
I have a funny Ralph Friedgen story. So I don't remember what high school I was at the time, but it was somewhere I was a head coach, and I had a few prospects on my team. I think they went FCS. One of them might have went to West Point or something. And so Ralph was at Rutgers. He was was he under flood? I can't remember if it was if
Yeah,
flood
this
had
was
brought him in.
recently then, just a
Yeah.
few
So
years ago.
yeah, like about I think recently
Yeah,
might be like 7 6 7 years ago, but
seems
or
sooner,
maybe
but
maybe it's 5, maybe it's 5 years ago. It all kind
yeah.
of bled together. But he comes around, and EJ Barthel was at Rutgers at the time, so it has to be a little bit a while ago. So EJ brings over Ralph. Ralph comes over on his cart. We're there for 7-on-7. Rutgers is a 7-on-7 tournament every year in the summer. It is probably, I want to say, 8:30 in the morning. Ralph pulls around. He comes and says hello. I kid you not, he had 2 cheeseburgers in his hands. It was 8:30 in the morning, and and I said, wow. I thought that was interesting. I said they must have just like Rutgers must have just opened their cheeseburger thing, like literally. And
They
he
probably
brought,
didn't. He
yeah,
probably
oh,
made them make cheeseburgers for him. That's it. The Frisian, the yearly Frisian diet, where he would, I'm going to knuckle down and lose weight, to me was always entertaining because I do the same thing.
right.
This is the year. This is the year. And I've got Mangino stories that are 18,000 times more inappropriate than what you just said. These guys, I mean, they're just big fat guys,
They're big
but
guys.
they're
They're huge guys.
good coaches, man.
Great coaches. Great coaches. That's why I always say, like, you know what? Who I understand with their head coaches, they're always trying, especially now, like everything is about social media and TV, right? So if they can, they're trying to have their coach like spelt, you know, wider shoulders, thinner waist, which is why Lane Kiffin could do everything but burn the house down and still have a chance of getting a job because he definitely looks the part, right?
He gets
Obviously,
a
he's a
little
great
chubby
coach,
though.
but
He
what
gets a little chubby though.
does he really?
He really does. Sometimes his face, you can always tell when Lane's in diet and Lane's in just enjoying himself mode because he does get a little chubby.
That's so funny. It's so true. It really is. It's true. But can't like Kansas. That I mean, that's Rutgers. Like when people like is Shiano the only guy that can turn around. I'm not saying he's the only guy, but it'd have to be him or like a direct disciple who kind of understands exactly all the nuances that he had to deal with and was able to build off of it because it's for every outsider that's ever come into Rutgers, it's just been a nightmare for them. Like, um, like they were mad at Kyle Flood. I mean, he went to like I think 3 bowl games in a row, but because he wasn't Chiano, right? And then they realized
Right.
real quick when they went to the guy from Ohio State that
Yeah.
outsider thing is not gonna.
Hmm.
It's just not going to
No.
happen there. It's and
No.
it may not happen anyway. It may not happen
No.
anyway, but it's definitely a difficult. it's difficult because you listen, and you've been in New Jersey, and there's so many good players that have come out of New Jersey. Most New Jersey players, the first thing they're thinking about, especially if they're from a disadvantaged areas, how do I get the heck out of New Jersey? That's the
Hmm.
first thing that's going through their head because, and any kid growing up where I grew up, that was kind of their first thing is like, it's so much traffic. There's so many people. Like if you're from the inner city, it could be dangerous where you're from. And you're thinking, I don't need any of this. Let me go somewhere that's like I can go relax, enjoy myself, have all about football, not have to worry about it. Like that's why Alabama can actually get a Minka Fitzpatrick out of New Jersey, and they also had another DB at the time that they got from there, Averett. I think it was
Yeah,
Anthony
the
Averett.
speedy, the fast kid. Yeah, and the Floridas with the Will Hills and all that stuff. I mean, that they just and again, those are winning programs. So if Rutgers not a winning program, and a Rutgers winning program at one point was 9 wins and going to the Texas Bowl, which wasn't even televised on any network except for the NFL Network. That's not the same success that you can see when you go down to visit Urban Meyer at Florida and you're at Friday Night Lights and the Swamp, and it's just different. So recruiting is hard, and this speaks to Nebraska too. I mean, the game day atmosphere and the spring game atmosphere at Nebraska better than any place in the world ever. Just the fan base is so great and so unbelievable. But you get what, 6 games a year, two of those potentially in cold weather to show that, and you get one spring game. The other times of the year, you're bringing in kids for visits and recruits, and it's either winter and it's cold, or it takes a long time to get there because you got to fly and connect and then drive 2 hours. And kids, I don't know, it's easier to recruit in the big cities or the college towns that are the NFL. Tuscaloosa is the NFL city of Alabama. Everywhere you go, it's Alabama, 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 and getting there isn't that hard. Everywhere you go in Nebraska and Lincoln, it's Nebraska. That's the NFL team, but it's hard to get there. So, recruiting is not easy. I think the part that nobody ever talks about or thinks about is imagine doing all the busyness that you have to do as a head coach and all the things we discussed, and dealing with a depression or anxiety, or perhaps a substance abuse issue that
Oh,
you're battling on a daily basis. Imagine having to prop yourself up on it every day, 365 days a year, as the face of that university, and who has to be positive, who has to be always this, that, and the on and on and on and on. That's exhausting as well, and it can wear you down. And what I saw at Big Ten Media Days, I saw Scott Frost who didn't want to play the game of, oh, we were close last year. But recently, in that podcast, I saw a guy who's like, just got a heavy burden. So, let's see if they beat Northwestern. If they do, then we can talk about a bowl game. But if they don't, I mean, you might as well like I said, get rid of them on the flight home. Just end this misery.
well, those you really need high energy, not because you have to be so expressive of high energy. Like you don't have to be like rah rah rah, but you yourself have to have such high energy just to keep like obviously Nick Saban is a guy that's turned on 24 hours a day. I mean, he's 7 years old, he's still turned on. Like you could see that Kirby Smart is turned on 24/7. You can even see like Lane Kiffin, he's turned like these guys are just turned on
Yeah.
24/7. If you're not that way in today's college football, you know, I think it has to be very, very difficult to be a head coach because if you're not able to just like, you do have to be some level of, you almost have to be like an enlightened narcissist. I don't know if
Mm.
that makes sense, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to have some narcissistic tendencies, no doubt about it, because you can't let everything that people say to you bother you because there's all kinds of things that people are saying to you that are negative. And then you have to be enlightened in the sense that you still have to have like levels of empathy to understand what everyone's thinking. That is unique, man, because that has to wear on you having those two. Most people are either narcissists, they just don't care about what anyone else thinks, or they're over on the other side where they're more empathetic and they're worried about this and that. Like, you kind of need both, and that's a quite a unique
Well, it's
that's a
hard.
unique
I'm telling you. I mean, listen, just as a as a media personality, the combination of being narcissistic, nothing bothers you and you're the best, but also being an empath and dealing with regular life and regular ups and downs and stuff, that's not easy because nobody wants to see the empath part. They all
Right.
want to see the confident narcissistic guy. So, when that red light goes on and you're doing like national television on ESPN or NBC, guess what? The narcissist has to take over. And that's what these coaches kind of have to do a lot. And I wonder what it's like, just in their house with their family and no one else is around and they're just relaxing who they are as a different person. I don't know any of them close enough at the head coach level. I knew a lot of them at the assistant coach level, but I don't know what Ryan Day does with his family, just chilling. Because I know what Ryan Day does for 16 to 17 hours a day as the head football coach at Ohio State. And it's go, go, go and move forward. What's he like when he doesn't have to be that? So, my battery's dying. We got to
Well,
wrap this up.
let's wrap up. Great conversation. That's really, really interesting points, especially like Ryan Day. I remember him as an assistant coming all the way up and how he was. I'm
He
curious
was
how he is
Chip
now.
Kelly's quarterback at UNH.
Yeah. Yeah.
When both of them were nothing. And now
Yep.
look at them. Head football coaches in the Power Five. To me, it's just amazing because
It
I don't
is.
know. I followed the ride from GA to assistant to a coordinator to head coach. It's just if you ever told me 25 years ago Ryan Day would be the head coach at Ohio State, I'd be like, what? It's just cool. So,
It is.
so let's wrap it up with myfootballcamps.com/D1. If you're looking for the promotion, if you're looking for as a young player too, to get a head start, because I'm telling you, 2026 class, you're going to be coming to us when you're heading into your senior year as a 2026. If you haven't promoted yourself at all, and you're like, what do I do now? And we'll be like, we'll help you, but we're not miracle workers. So
Right.
get on it early, younger kids, especially, but also if you're 2023 or 2024, get on this program. Um, you know, find yourself a home. If you're 2023, FCS is good. It's good. The portal's there. Don't dismay. And if you're 2024, hop it on now. You might not have to go that route. So that's my spiel.
Check us out every Monday. We'll be here. Myfootballcamps.com/D1. I'm Mike. I'll see you next week.
Yeah, I'm gonna go check my phone. See ya.
All right. Bye.